True Home Alone horror stories. Maria is a young woman living in Los Angeles, a busy and energetic city. She loves the hustle and bustle of life here, but after a long day of stressful work at the office, she often looks for quiet places to relax. Griffith Park is Maria's favorite destination. Located in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, this park brings a sense of peace, covered with vast forests, deserted trails, and open spaces of natural land. Maria often jogs in the park in the evening. It is the most peaceful time of the day for her, when the sounds of the city gradually fade away, leaving only the wind blowing through the trees and the gentle footsteps on the dirt path. Running not only helps her relieve stress, but also helps her stay healthy. Griffith Park is a place where she can temporarily escape the hustle and bustle of Los Angeles. One night, Maria decided to go for a run later than usual. Work at the office had taken longer than expected, causing her to leave work late. It was dusk by the time she reached the park. The cool autumn air and the dim lights in the distance made the atmosphere a little gloomy, but Maria didn't mind. She was used to this park and felt safe. Her footsteps lightly brushed along the path, the crunch of dry leaves under her feet echoing in the quiet space. Everything was normal like any other day until Maria felt something strange. She felt like someone was watching her. The feeling was not clear at first, but gradually it became heavier. Her natural instinct made her stop, turn around, and look around, but she saw nothing but darkness and silent bushes. Maria felt a little nervous, but tried to calm herself down. It's probably just a feeling, she thought, and continued running. However, a few minutes later, the feeling of being followed returned, stronger this time. Every step she took seemed to be echoed by a small sound, as if someone was following her. This time, Maria turned around immediately, and her heart stopped when she saw a tall man standing about 20 meters away from her. He was dressed in black, not moving, just standing there, staring at her. Maria panicked, trying to calm herself. She thought about screaming or running faster, but she didn't want to cause panic and confusion. Maybe it was just someone walking around at night like her. She turned and ran again, but this time her heart was pounding. Her breathing was faster. She ran faster, hoping to leave the park sooner than usual. Maria is a young woman living in Los Angeles, a busy and energetic city. She loves the hustle and bustle of life here, but after a long day of stressful work at the office, she often looks for quiet places to relax. Griffith Park is Maria's favorite destination. Located in the heart of downtown Los Angeles, this park brings a sense of peace, covered with vast forests, deserted trails, and open spaces of natural land. The mysterious man's figure disappeared strangely. Maria stood still, not understanding what was happening. The wind blew gently through the rustling branches. The surrounding space became colder, making her feel unsafe. Maria decided not to continue running. She slowly walked off the path and quickly walked towards the parking lot. But the closer she got to the exit, the more she felt like someone was following her. The footsteps continued to echo, even though Maria could not see anyone. As she exited the trail and entered the parking lot, Maria turned around one last time. She couldn't believe her eyes. The man in black appeared again, this time standing right in the middle of the trail, just a few dozen meters away from her. His face was still unclear in the darkness, but Maria sensed something dark and evil emanating from him. Panicking, Maria jumped into the car and slammed the door shut. She quickly started the car, feeling uneasy. As the car started moving, she looked back in the rearview mirror and saw the man's figure disappear again, as if he had never existed. Maria's whole body trembled, and she knew that what she had just experienced was not normal. After returning home, Maria tried to forget this strange incident at Griffith Park. She told a few friends about it, but no one believed her completely. They thought it was just a prank or a haunting feeling due to fatigue. However, Maria could not get the image of that man and the feeling of being followed away. Soon, Maria decided to investigate Griffith Park and the ghost stories surrounding it. She discovered that the park had been the site of many mysterious events, including murders and accidents. One of the most haunting stories was about a tramp who was brutally murdered in the park many years ago. It is said that his spirit still roams the area, especially on dark nights when the park is most deserted. Maria couldn't help but think of the man in black she had seen. Perhaps it was the spirit of that wanderer, forever restless, and continued to wander Griffith Park in search of release. After that night, Maria never dared to return to the park alone at night. What she had experienced was a reminder that there are things that cannot be explained by reason and science, and that this world still has many terrifying mysteries that we do not know. For Maria, it was more than just an encounter. It was a terrifying supernatural experience that she would never forget. Griffith Park, with its natural beauty and tranquility during the day, became a place she did not dare to set foot in at night. Jack is a middle-aged man living in Arizona, one of the states famous for its wild lands and endless highways. He is a lover of long car trips and always enjoys the feeling of freedom when driving through deserted roads, especially on Route 66, one of the historic roads of America. For Jack, there is nothing more enjoyable than a long road trip, enjoying his favorite music and admiring the scenery on both sides of the road. One winter evening, Jack decided to drive from Arizona to New Mexico to visit an old friend. The drive wasn't very long, but to experience Route 66 at night, Jack chose to take the deserted road instead of the busy highway. By the time he left home, it was getting dark and the air outside was chilly. The landscape around Route 66 was eerily quiet, with rolling hills and scattered treetops exposed in the dim moonlight. Jack drove for an hour. Only the steady sound of the engine echoed in the silence. The road ahead was empty. Only occasionally a few cars going the opposite direction passed by. The feeling of being alone in the middle of the long road made Jack feel light and comfortable. However, as the night deepened, a sense of unease gradually appeared in his heart. Around midnight, Jack began to notice something strange. He kept hearing light tapping noises, as if someone was tapping on the car door from outside. At first, he thought it might be the sound of an engine or the wind, but the knocking grew louder and more regular. It was coming from the passenger door, and Jack couldn't help but turn to look. But there was no one there. The door was still closed, and darkness enveloped the glass. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine, but he told himself that he was just tired and imagining things. About 30 minutes later, as Jack drove down a quieter stretch of road, the knocking came again. This time, it was as clear as if someone was standing right outside the car window. Jack stopped the car and looked around, but there was no sign of anyone nearby. The night sky was still, except for the gentle wind blowing across the deserted fields beside the road. But there was something strange as soon as Jack turned off the engine. The air became unusually cold, as if the temperature had dropped sharply in just a few seconds. Jack felt uneasy. He decided not to check any further, started the car, and continued his journey. But the feeling of unease did not leave him. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of a figure standing in the distance, right by the side of the road, in the dim light of the headlights. Jack's heart beat faster, but when he stopped the car to take a closer look, the figure had disappeared. Jack continued driving, but the heavy, anxious feeling did not leave him. He tried to listen to music to distract himself, but thoughts of that shadow kept lingering in his head. Maybe he was imagining things, but some part of him could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. As the night deepened, the silence became eerily quiet. Around midnight, Jack drove through an empty land with dry, rocky mountains and low bushes on both sides. Suddenly, in the distance, he saw a woman standing in the middle of the road, wearing a long white dress. She didn't move, just stood still, facing his car. Jack quickly stepped on the brakes, stopping the car just a few meters away from the woman. He could clearly see her through the headlights. Her face was pale and cold, Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Jack's heart pounded. He didn't know what to do. She didn't wave, didn't say anything, just stood there like a statue. His instincts told him not to get out of the car, but he couldn't just sit there. After a few minutes of debating, Jack decided to get out and ask if she needed help. As Jack opened the door and stepped out, a cold wind blew past. He approached the girl, but just a few steps away from reaching her, the woman suddenly disappeared, as if melting into thin air. Jack frantically turned his head to look around, but she had completely disappeared without a trace. His whole body turned cold, and he felt an invisible fear envelop him. Not wanting to stay in this place any longer, Jack quickly got back into the car, slammed the door shut, and stepped on the gas. The car sped away at high speed, but his mind was still filled with the image of that woman. What had happened? Had he encountered a real ghost? Or was it all just a figment of his imagination? Jack didn't dare look back in the rearview mirror. He just focused on driving and hoped to get to safety soon. But every time he glanced at the seat next to him, he had the feeling that someone was sitting there, staring at him. The next morning, when he arrived in New Mexico, Jack told his story to his friend. His friend listened quietly and smiled, saying to him, "Route 66 has a lot of ghost stories, especially that stretch of road. Many years ago, a woman died in a car accident on that stretch of road. It is said that her ghost still roams there, and people who pass by at night will see her." Jack shivered. He realized that what he had experienced was not a mistake or a figment of his imagination. The shadow and the woman on the road were not natural phenomena. He had truly encountered something supernatural, a ghost on Route 66. From that day on, Jack never dared to drive alone at night on Route 66 again. The memories of the woman in the white dress still haunted him, and every time he thought about it, he felt a cold fear creeping into his heart, just like that fateful night. Route 66, a road full of history, now carried with it, for Jack, terrifying mysteries that he would never forget. Tom is a middle-aged man living in a small, quiet town in Texas. He works for a construction company and often travels between neighborhoods to manage projects. Due to his busy work schedule, Tom often has to drive on deserted roads at night. For him, driving through vast expanses of land, surrounded by rolling grasslands and rolling hills, is nothing new. The endless Texas roads with the starry night sky give him a sense of comfort and freedom. One evening, after finishing work in a town about 3 hours' drive away, Tom decided to return home that night. The drive was long and lonely, but Tom was used to such journeys. By the time he left town, it was completely dark. Only the headlights of his car illuminated the road, and everything else was pitch black. Tom turned on the radio to ease the eerie silence, but the weak signal made the static even more eerie. After about an hour of driving, the road ahead became deserted. There were no houses or signs of life around, just vast stretches of deserted fields. Suddenly, Tom saw a dark figure appear on the side of the road ahead. As he got closer, he realized it was a man, standing right on the side of the road, waving his arms as if asking for a ride. The man was quite tall, wearing a long black coat and a wide-brimmed hat that hid most of his face. Tom slowed down slowly, the car gradually stopping just a few meters away from the man. He looked more closely through the windshield, but something made him hesitate. The man stood still, his eyes never leaving Tom, but he did not move closer to the car. For a few short seconds, Tom felt a surge of unease. He wondered if he should help this man or not, but the feeling of invisible danger made him decide not to get out of the car. Tom rolled down the window a little, enough to speak to the man without leaving the safety of the car. "Do you need any help?" Tom asked, his voice echoing in the silence. The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood still for a long moment, his eyes still fixed on Tom. The silence stretched on, making the atmosphere heavy. Finally, the man muttered something that Tom couldn't quite make out. His voice was deep and seemed to come from far away, despite the close distance between them. Tom felt a wave of fear wash over him. He decided not to prolong the conversation. "Sorry, I have to go," Tom said quickly, then rolled up the window, started the car, and drove away. Tom's car sped off into the darkness, leaving the man standing silently on the side of the road. His heart pounded in his chest, as if he had just escaped something very bad. However, after driving a short distance, he began to question himself. Perhaps he had been too sensitive and let unnecessary fear take over. Perhaps the man just needed help, and he had missed the opportunity to help someone in need. But it wasn't long before Tom noticed something else. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, he saw an image that made his blood run cold. The man in the black coat was still standing there, but this time he wasn't standing on the side of the road. He was in the middle of the road, not far from his car. Even though Tom's car had already traveled quite a distance, the man's image was so clear that it was as if he had just teleported there. But it wasn't long before Tom noticed something else. When he touched in the rearview mirror, he saw an image that made his blood run cold. The man in the black coat was still standing there, but this time he wasn't standing on the side of the road. He was in the middle of the road, not far from his car. Even though Tom's car had already traveled quite a distance, the man's image was so clear that it was as if he had just teleported there. About half an hour later, Tom stopped at a small gas station on the side of the road. He felt the need to stop to calm down. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, with only a few dim lights illuminating it. Tom stepped out of the car, feeling cold, even though the night air wasn't that cold. As he entered the convenience store inside the gas station, the clerk behind the counter gave him a strange look. "You seem nervous," the clerk said, his voice tinged with concern. Tom shook his head, trying to suppress the fear in his heart. "I just saw a man standing on the side of the road, but he disappeared," Tom said, not wanting to go into details, but feeling the need to share a little to dispel his unease. The clerk fell silent, his face tense. "The man on the side of the road?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "You're not the first to mention this." Tom was surprised. "What are you talking about?" The employee lowered his voice, moved closer and said, "I have worked at this gas station for many years, and many drivers have told me about a mysterious man on the side of the road on this stretch of road. They all described him wearing a black coat, standing there waving his hands, and when they looked back, he disappeared. Some people say he is the ghost of someone who had an accident here many years ago. But what happened to him, no one knows." Tom felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to the clerk's words. What he had just experienced was not just his own imagination, but perhaps something strange had really happened on this stretch of road. He left the gas station with a heavy heart and continued driving home. For the rest of the journey, Tom could not stop thinking about the man on the side of the road. Even though he tried to push that image out of his mind, the fear still haunted him, as if there was a dark shadow following his every step. When he got home, Tom didn't dare tell anyone the story, fearing that they would think he was paranoid. But from then on, every time he drove down the deserted road at night, Tom always felt an invisible presence watching him. The dark nights on the Texas highway were no longer as peaceful as they used to be, and the man by the side of the road, with his mysterious eyes and inexplicable presence, still haunted Tom's mind. The ghost of that stretch of road, whether real or just an urban legend, has become part of the horror stories in the minds of nighttime drivers. And Tom, like many others, has become part of that story. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to wait for the next videos.